Hello everybody. This will be a video discussing using the new Dolby Atmos Renderer version 5 on a Windows PC alongside your DAW, i.e. a single system for both DAW and renderer. Officially, Dolby require Windows users to use a second PC and connect through hardware between DAW and the renderer. The recent version 5 release kind of brings together production suite and mastering suite as one install, and so now there is essentially a demo for Windows and a full Dolby Atmos render for Windows without having to purchase the, I don't know what it was, £1,000 mastering suite. I'm assuming you've installed the Dolby Atmos renderer either officially because you own it, or you've downloaded the iLok demo license and are running the 90-day trial. You'll need to download ASIOLink Pro. The developer passed away a while ago, but the family released the source code, and it's still available for download and can be patched to remove the license requirements. Essentially, it's a donationware now, really. I have tried jack audio, which is the best suited for the task, but the Dolby Atmos renderer seems to have issues with kind of hijacking the hardware that jack is already in command of, and so essentially the Dolby Atmos renderer crashes itself, from what I can tell, which is a shame because jack allows an infinite number of channels between applications. It's essentially a zero latency audio server. Obviously it still takes into account the latency of the physical hardware and the driver, so subject to ASIO performance. But ASIOLink does a good job of essentially replicating what the Dolby Audio Bridge does for macOS. On macOS, I believe it works as an aggregate device, so the Dolby the Dolby Audio Bridge connects DAW to renderer via core audio. On Windows, that would be a 16-channel limit, I believe. So you have to go either ASIO or port audio. I think probably Wasapi could handle it, but nobody really seems to develop for Wasapi. So from what I can tell reading the developer docs, essentially that's an unlimited direct connection that doesn't pass through the Windows kernel, so would be a zero latency solution as well, or I think it's actually 4 milliseconds, but anyway. I'm going to assume you've got the renderer installed, you've got the ASIOLink Pro installed, and you should somewhere have an icon for ASIOLink Pro and an icon for the Dolby Atmos renderer. Open up the Dolby Atmos renderer, and if you set the device for it to use to ASIOLink, you will see an instance of ASIOLink fire up, which is what this window is here, and that is essentially your audio server, which is running kind of off of the Dolby Atmos renderer. So when that finishes initializing, You'll then have 64 channels of audio in and 64 channels of audio out. Obviously, you wouldn't have that many channels coming out of the renderer, but you will have either stereo or 714 or 916. Okay, so if I just open this out, so there are your 64 inputs, there are your 64 outputs. This is running as a server. Because I'm having to record all this, unfortunately I can't use a nicely optimized hardware ASIO driver, so I'm just using a virtual driver that comes with voice meter. So the audio is not going to be perfect, but it makes making the video a lot more convenient. The enable multi-clients needs to be checked. What that does is allows any application, ASIO application, to connect to this device. So any application can send up to 64 channels to this device, which in this case is the Dolby Atmos Renderer. Typically this voice meter virtual ASIO would be your main speaker out kind of hardware audio interface. That's really all you need to know on this. There's another mode where this runs as a client, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But essentially you don't need any cables connecting anything from driver in or anything like that. Just the blank instance of the server is providing us with 64 I/O via ASIO. You can close these windows down, they carry on running in the system background. So essentially we've got the Dolby Atmos renderer running, 64 channels already connected to it, and the input configuration is at the moment just a standard 128 channel configuration. Obviously we can only send to 64 of those from any application running on the PC. Okay. Next step, you're going to need some way of getting audio to the renderer. We'll go with the full-blown renderer with Resolve in a minute, but just to simplify what's going on, I'll fire up Bitwig. My audio might cut out a little bit, although Bitwig is relatively kind compared to DaVinci Resolve for hijacking all the audio connections. So I'll just let this open. Okay, so just opening the project. So in Bitwig, I've set the audio device to be ASIOLink Pro, and we've now got a second instance not running directly to the ASIO driver. This is simply a client connected to ASIOLink. So ASIOLink will live down here. And there's our two instances. So that's the renderer, our main hardware output, and this is a client, in this case Bitwig. So we can see here the Bitwig audio engine's connected essentially to the Dolby Atmos renderer. Again, you don't need any cables connecting anything. We're just using the raw 64 I/O going from A to B. I'd highly recommend you, once you get a system that works, save the profiles, and you can recall them later. The route to ASIO in needs to be checked. All that's really saying is what comes out of Bitwig needs to go in to the server. So the client out goes to the server in. That's pretty much how ASIOLink routes the audio. I'm going to close these down because we can come back to those later. So in Bitwig, using the ASIOLink Pro, obviously I'd love to be able to use jack there, which would bypass ASIO entirely and just run directly to the server, but we can't do that. I've got 64 channels of output. The last two are mono because I'll use channel 64 for the timecode. The timecode in Bitwig is just running out of the master out on channel 64, and I've got a little plugin running that basically just takes the sample position of the timeline and converts it to timecode. Right, so all going well. We open up the renderer. I'll just make this stick to the front of the screen so we don't lose it. I think that's there. And we'll reduce the scale down a Bitwig a bit. Okay. If I press play, we should see, obviously I'm only routing out to channels 1 to 10 because you can't route non-panned audio or non-metadata audio into objects. So just for the sake of demonstrating how any audio gets into the renderer, this is perfectly fine. So if I press play now, we should hear something. Okay, so we've got audio routing out of the client into the server, and there's our Bitwig 10 outs going into the Dolby Atmos Renderer 10 ins. I've got the renderer just set to stereo output just because I'm on headphones, because that's where my mic is. So we've got 2 channels coming out. Obviously if you're in a 714 room, you'd have your 12 channels out, or 916, 16 channels out. So that is pretty much how the routing works. What we'll do, we'll shut down Bitwig. Obviously if we had a Windows version of the Mac OS Dolby Atmos panner, we could place those panners on the device chain in Bitwig and then start sending the metadata to the renderer, essentially start building a Dolby Atmos track from Bitwig, but Dolby don't port their Mac OS plugins to Windows for some reason. But besides that, it would really need Bitwig to incorporate kind of ADM handling and export and import and stuff like that. So there's nothing too much lost there. The renderers, the DAWs with built-in renderers, they include kind of a native panner which does the same, sends the metadata to the renderer. The metadata is essentially describing the size, the position, the binaural modes of the stem of audio, but the stem of audio itself isn't panned. The renderer pans the audio. If you open up an ADM master file from Dolby Atmos, you'll see that it's more or less a duplicate of your session kind of post fader, but pre Dolby Atmos panner. That's because Dolby Atmos is going to do the panning, not the DAW. It's just that you hear it as if it has panned in the DAW in a traditional sense. Okay, let's close down Bitwig. This sometimes hangs a little bit. I think it's just because of how the ASIOLink is hanging on to the audio engine. But this should close down in a minute, and then we'll open up DaVinci Resolve and show a full kind of mix going to objects. So it's critical that we keep the renderer running as the ASIO kind of hardware, or keep it running connected to the ASIO hardware, because this needs to remain as the server. DaVinci Resolve will probably mess all this up in a minute, because it wants to be the boss of all the audio for some reason, and as it starts, it basically hijacks a lot of audio, including my mic. So I'm going to be quiet now until it's loaded. Okay, right, so I had to be quiet there because you can see the instances of ASIOLink coming and going, including my microphone, even though there shouldn't be any connection to the microphone input. That's a completely separate driver. Okay, so you can all immediately see we've got some change happening here in the renderer, because our objects are now lit up. And the reason they're lit up is because DaVinci Resolve is it's getting a bit of a Windows management. Let's just close all these down for now. DaVinci Resolve is set to connect to the Dolby Atmos renderer on 127.0.0.1, and the base audio output. I don't really understand how that works, but it has to connect to the first channel of your multi-channel device, basically. So in our case, it's ASIOLink Pro. Okay, let's cancel out that. So we've got what, 20 odd objects here. They're all routed to the Atmos bus. Master bus, which is going to the renderer essentially. So similarly to in Bitwig, if we press play, just come back here, we should see some audio come through. I can immediately see we've got a little issue here. I shouldn't have any audio going to the bed. So this will either, as I was saying, cause Resolve to want to take over the audio server, or we'll be lucky. So essentially, in patch input, yeah, so this is our outputs, and for some reason DaVinci always wants to send a control room to the bed, even though I've never told it to. So if I unpatch that, close that down. Yeah, that's better. So we've got all other objects and nothing going through to the bed, which is what I want. And if I just go into a panner, I think this is the kick. You should see the metadata from this panner adjust the movement in the Dolby Atmos Renderer kind of room view as well. So we've got audio connected, we've got metadata connected, so we can mix, you know, exactly how we want. Time codes coming through from the timeline of DaVinci Resolve. in the settings, that's essentially the format of it is decided here, so you can be LTC or ASIOLink. Not quite sure if ASIOLink can work through ASIOSync can work through ASIOLink. So if anyone knows, let me know. Frame rate is 30, so that has to match DAW to renderer, and I'm using a sample rate of 48, but you can also use 96, but the buffer size increases to, I think, 1024 when you do that. Here's my monitoring mode. I'm just monitoring stereo, and my routing is to channels 1 and 2 of ASIOLink Pro server, basically, which is essentially that is these two channels here. So if I press play again on this, let's come out of that. So DaVinci Resolve, there's our outputs, so starting at 11 up to channel 42. That's mirrored on the inputs into the server, which is the Dolby Atmos Renderer, and then my headphone monitoring is channels 1 and 2, and that is going to voice meter virtual ASIO in order to record this. So you can see my CPU is pretty much maxing out every now and then, because it really is just a Windows tablet on a mobile CPU. I think in reality, once I get this onto the workstation PC, this will be a heck of a lot more efficient. But you know, it's doing a pretty good job considering the recommended configuration is a whole second computer. We've got a DAW, we've got the renderer, we've got ASIOLink Pro, I've got screen recording, I've got separate audio routing for the mic going through a different audio device as well. And then that's all being merged back down to record as well. So I think in reality, even on a modest, what's this, 2.8 4-core old 2015 generation mobile CPU, I think even that is enough to have quite a lot of fun with. I think that's pretty much covers the gist of it. What you can also do, which is quite interesting, is if as long as I don't press play on here, I can go back to Bitwig. If I open Bitwig up, so we're now going to create, we've got a server for Dolby Atmos Renderer, we've got an instance of Resolve, and now we're going to add a second client, basically the multi-client. We're going to add Bitwig to it. Just wait for this to load. It's got quite a lot of plugins it scans before it starts up. Okay, so I'll return to that track that we were playing with. So there's our second client, ASIOLink multi-client. If I open that project, Not sure if that opened or not. Here we go. So this computer is pretty much maxed out now. Yeah, so what we could do is so we've got that kicks coming in on objects 11 and 12. If I just solo that, and we take that out to 11 and 12. So I'm now sending it to the same place that DaVinci Resolve was sending it. And if we just mute that track, where are we here? Yeah, if we just mute, in fact, let's just, yeah, let's just delete all of these. So I'm assuming the timeline's going to get adjusted. Go back to 0. Okay, so I've still got on audio 1. Audio 1. I just lost the connection there. Track direct audio 1 is 11 and 12. Okay, I don't think it'll matter. Right, so if I minimize down, DaVinci Resolve, I think that this must have to go to Atmos. Is that still? Yeah, so we've still got panning in the renderer, you'll see as I'm moving that. And if we press play on Bitwig, yeah, so we've got Bitwig now coming into the same objects as the renderer, but just to prove that if we did have a VST panner, we could rotate this. Or maybe not. What is this? Audio panel 1. Oh, I know what's probably happened. I was looking at the wrong place. It's track direct, audio 1, 11 and 12. I thought that should have patched. It does work, but the order that I've started things has caused an issue. Anyway, I hope that kind of goes through some ideas. Yeah, you can see the renderers reinitializing ASIOLink. That's the only problem with using the virtual drivers and how some audio software works is that they kind of continually disconnecting and kind of hijacking all your audio, which causes everything to reinitialize, and that can be a problem. But I think generally you would be using one DAW and the renderer rather than trying to do stupid stuff like connecting two DAWs at the same time. But if you look at one of my other videos, I'll put a link in the description. I do show this working. So yeah, I hope that is of some use. I know there's been lots of discussion about how to do it, and this is a possible way. Until next time, cheerio.